Hello. Hello.
Hello.
Aijaz?
Yes. Sorry, I didn't know if you were saying hello to me.
I'm saying hello to you and the world.
Yes.
All right. Welcome back, everybody. Thanks so much for being here. Aijaz, did you want to say anything before we start your video?
No. I look forward to talking to everyone about VoiceOver.
Very good. And if you have any questions, as always, join his channel and ask them there, and we will do a live Q&A at the end. All right, let's start your video.
It is a truth universally acknowledged that a single man in possession of a good fortune must be in want of a wife. Pride and Prejudice. You don't know about me without you have read a book by the name of The Adventures of Tom Sawyer, but that ain't no matter. The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn. Call Me Ishmael. Moby Dick. One of the things that great books have in common is that their first sentence sets the tone for the rest of the book. The most important book for Muslims is the Quran. The Quran was revealed over a period of 23 years. The first word that was revealed over that time can be considered a sentence by itself. That word translates into read. Hi, my name is Aijaz, and I'd like to thank the folks at 360 iDev for giving me the opportunity to speak to you today. 10 years ago, I changed the way we interact with the Quran from this to this. As you can see, this app is about as skeuomorphic as you can get. As far as I can tell, it's the only Quran app out there that features this realistic page-turning effect. Now, this isn't only done for vanity purposes. When people decide to memorize part or all of the Quran, they wind up sticking with a certain format. Now, there aren't too many different formats of the Quran. When we talk about font size, the number of pages, etc., people usually wind up choosing one and sticking with it for the rest of their life. It helps with memorization if you know that the sentence that you're trying to remember is somewhere in the upper right-hand corner of the page. With the visual layout being such a central part of the app, I had to ask myself, is there something that I can do to make the app more accessible to the blind and the visually impaired? Let's take a step back and look at the numbers. The CDC reports that in the United States, 12 million people are visually impaired, of which 1 million people are blind. When you look at the numbers for the entire world, 250 million people are visually impaired, and there are 35 million people who are blind. So we're talking about more than 250 million people who have some sort of visual impairment. That's a lot of people who need accessible apps that work for them just as well as they work for you and for me. With numbers this large, they can be difficult to comprehend. Let's look at the experience of one single person. 3 weeks before the death of Steve Jobs, Stevie Wonder interrupted a performance at the Echoplex in Los Angeles. He wished Jobs well and then went on to say this.
And his company took the challenge in making his technology accessible to everyone. In the spirit of carrying and moving the world forward, Steve Jobs. Because there's nothing on the iPhone or the iPad that you can do that I can't do. As a matter of fact, I can be talking to you, you can be looking at me, and I can be doing whatever I need to do, and you don't even know what I'm doing. Yeah!
Did you catch that? There's nothing on the iPhone or iPad that you can do that I can't do. That's the kind of experience I want to provide my customers. That's what I want. The technology that Apple uses to support its blind users is called VoiceOver. Let's look at an example of how this works. I've set up my phone to allow me to turn on VoiceOver when I tap the accessibility shortcut, which is tapping the home button 3 times.
Monday, August 17th. Clock, 16:14. Settings.
Double tapping the selected icon selects it.
Settings. General. Heading. About.
VoiceOver
Button.
can read whatever I select, or it can read the entire
Name. First
screen,
chair.
as
Button.
you can see
General.
over here.
Back button. General. Back button. About. Heading. Software version. 13.6. Model name. iPhone 11 Pro Max. Model number. MWGJ2LL/A.
If I know where a button is,
General.
I can tap it, double
About.
tap it,
Button.
and then go
Settings.
back.
Back button. Settings. Back
There's a
button.
lot more to
Settings.
VoiceOver than
Heading.
I can show you in this video, but it is one of the most powerful
Alert.
tools
Accessibility
out there
shortcuts.
for
Selected.
accessibility.
VoiceOver. Button. VoiceOver off.
So the problem I'm faced with is how do I implement VoiceOver for such a skeuomorphic app? I could choose not to implement VoiceOver at all, but that's really not an option. So I have two options now. First is I could duplicate the experience that sighted users have when I use VoiceOver. The second option is to create a completely new experience when VoiceOver is activated. Let's have a look at these two options and see what it's like. Here's a very simple sample app with 3 labels and a button. There's a label that reads name and another one that has my name. And then there's a button that generates a random number, and the random number is stored in a field that is on the lower right-hand corner. VoiceOver reads the screen as follows.
VoiceOver on. VO app. Name. Name. Aijaz. Gen number sign. Button. 3.
Now that's not too bad, but if I change the layout on the screen, it messes up VoiceOver. This time I've swapped the columns and rows.
Name. Gen number sign. Button. Aijaz. 3.
There's no way for VoiceOver to know that these two items are related and that these two items are related. One way I can fix this is to list the view's accessibility elements so that the accessibility elements are read in the proper order.
Name. Aijaz. Gen number sign. Button. 3.
Well, this is nice, but we can do better than that, can't we? Of course we can. Let's have a look. Let's say I want to treat all 4 elements as part of a single structure as far as accessibility is concerned. I can put them all inside a single UI view and then assign VoiceOver attributes to that UI view. So let's do that right here. Let's add a UI view. I'm going to make this UI view a different color just so that we can see it easily. Let's make it green, real ugly green. Let's move these in here. I'm not looking at auto layout right now, but obviously in a real app, I would set auto layout. Now, these 4 items are inside a UI view. Now what I need to do is set up their accessibility. To do that, I'll create a new accessibility element. And I'll say that it is a container, and the container is this view that really doesn't exist right now. So let's call it container view. And let's make this view container view. Create an IP outlet for it. I will need to force unwrap it because we can't have an optional over there. And now we set the accessibility element for this label to be the string that we want VoiceOver to use to refer to this collection. Accessibility label equals let's see here, name label there we go. I'll use default values in case we don't have any text. There we go. Now I want to tell VoiceOver where this container view is located so that it highlights the view properly. So I can say element.accessibility frame in container space equals container view dot frame. This will make sure that when VoiceOver is looking at this container view, it highlights this entire thing. And then finally, now that I have my accessibility element, I want to set this entire view's accessibility elements list to contain just this one thing, element. Let's run this and see. what happens.
VO app. The name is Aijaz and the random number is 3. The name is Aijaz and the random number is 3. The name is Aijaz and the random number is 3.
That's almost perfect. VoiceOver doesn't seem to recognize the button anymore, though. The way we do that is we create a custom accessibility action. So we'll say let action equals UI custom accessibility or accessibility custom action. We'll give it a name, and that's the name that VoiceOver will use. So we'll give it a good name. Let's say generate random number. Target will be the accessibility element, or in this case the target is going to be self because we want to invoke a method on self. So we'll say target is self, and then the selector is going to be the genRand function, selector genRand. All right. We'll finish off by adding this new action to our grouped elements list of custom accessibility actions. Element dot custom actions, accessibility custom actions, is a list with just this one action right now because we only have one action. What I'm also going to do is I want to make sure that this is an Objective-C function so that it can be invoked by the selector. I'm just going to change this random number to generate a number between 1 and 50, so the chances that we actually see the number change are pretty high. Let's run this and see what happens.
VoiceOver on. VO app. The name is Aijaz and the random number is 3. Actions available.
Aha! Now it tells me there are actions available. If I swipe down, it'll list the actions.
Generate random number.
If I double tap, it will invoke the currently selected action. I double tapped and the number changed. And again. And again. Now that I know how to set up custom actions for arbitrarily complex views, how do I do this with my Quran Memorizer app? The answer is, I don't know. Just because I know how to do something technically, it doesn't necessarily mean that I'll have the best possible experience for the users. This is where I really need to start asking blind or visually impaired users to advise me on what they would like to see when they have VoiceOver with this app. Because this is a work in progress, I don't have custom actions enabled in the app right now as it is in production. Instead, what I'm using is the second option, which is a completely different interface for VoiceOver. Let me show you what that looks like.
VoiceOver on. Quran Memorizer. Heading.
When the app notices that VoiceOver has been turned on, the interface changes completely. It goes into what I call text-only mode. In text-only mode, the interface is a navigation view controller that hosts multiple UI table view controllers.
Read and search Quran. Chapter 18, Al-Kahf, button. Select chapter. Chapter 18, Al-Kahf, button. Select 1, Al-Fatiha.
One of the side effects of using a UI navigation controller and a UI table view controller is that now the apps become less skeuomorphic and VoiceOver works the way people expect VoiceOver to work in a less skeuomorphic app.
The Quran. Select, search. Chapter 1, compose, 15, chapter 1, Al-Fatiha, verse 1.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim.
In the name of Allah, the entirely merciful, the especially merciful. 15 notes. Actions available.
Now what we're seeing over here is exactly what we did with that sample app that we just saw. I have a complex UI table view cell, but I have created accessibility elements so that there is one combined accessibility label for this table view cell, and then there are a bunch of custom actions associated with it.
Play. Plays this verse's audio. Compose. Adds a reflection with this verse. Reflections. Shows reflections with this verse. Chronomizer. Button. Chronomizer. Chronomizer. Heading. Alert. Accessibility shortcuts. Selected. VoiceOver. Button. VoiceOver off.
When the app realizes that VoiceOver has been turned off, it immediately goes back into the skeuomorphic mode, or the book mode as I like to call it. One of the side effects of all of this is that I realized that the text-only mode was really useful. So I actually added it as a feature in the app. So even if you don't have VoiceOver enabled, you can actually choose to go into text-only mode if you want to access certain functionality of the app a lot faster without having to deal with the overhead of dealing with a skeuomorphic app. And of course, you can always choose to turn text-only mode off. So, I've shown you two different ways to use VoiceOver with a heavily skeuomorphic app. Which way is better? Again, I really don't know. This is the kind of app where right answer is what your users tell you to do. So one of the things I'm going to be doing over the next few weeks and months is working with blind users and asking them to beta test the app and tell me what works best for them. I just cannot put myself in their shoes and arbitrarily decide or use my own experiences to decide what is the better option. So expect this app to change very significantly, or maybe not at all, in the next few weeks and months. What I'd like you to take away from this talk is the understanding that VoiceOver is crucial. It's critical to support VoiceOver in your apps. And just because we know how to do something technically, we may not always know what works best for your users. And this is where we need to ask our users what they want from the app. And talking to them, working with them, and having a good ongoing relationship with them is the best way that we can make our apps more useful for them. I'll stick around for questions. Please feel free to ask if you have any questions. Thank you very much.
Super excellent. Thank you, Aijaz. As always, another excellent presentation.
Thank you.
I think it's so important to make sure that your app is accessible along the lines with making sure it's internationalized and make sure to have it available to a broader audience.
Absolutely. I'd like to give a shout out to Charles Ferry, who spoke about this and introduced me to this video of Stevie Wonder. I think that the empowerment in his voice when he says there's nothing that you can do on your iPhone and iPad that I can't do, that's amazing. Right? Yeah. And I'm not there yet. Unfortunately, with a major update to my app, I actually introduced some regressions to VoiceOver. So we always have work to do, just like we always have to update our apps. I always have ongoing VoiceOver support that needs to be done. You're never done with accessibility work, right? Mm-hmm. Just like you're never done with your app.
Yeah. So let's go through some questions here. We have a couple of minutes. Did you have to do anything special to intersperse Arabic text and have VoiceOver read it? And did you run into any issues with right-to-left text in an otherwise English app?
No, actually, everything worked almost perfectly out of the box. Excuse me. iOS has some really good voices for different languages, so I was able to select the kind of voice that I wanted. In fact, depending on the language, you could have multiple different readers. So you can select, and actually I have that in one of my settings options. I have an option to select which voice should read. Do you prefer a male voice? Do you prefer a female voice? Do you prefer a voice that sounds like it's an English person speaking Arabic, or in another case, Hindi, right? So it's really very, very functional right out of the box. I'm amazingly impressed just how well it works.
Let's see. Can you make accessibility groups without having to modify the view hierarchy?
No. And I did answer that. There is a link that I posted in response to that question. And that's a link to Apple's Docs, and they show how to do it. I just chose to change the view hierarchy so that I wouldn't have to explain as much in the video.
Okay, fair enough. What architectures or patterns do you enjoy for keeping these large modalities easy to develop?
If I understand the question properly, I think my answer to this would be, in this app, starting about 3 or 4 years ago, I started using Model View Controller Coordinator, and I think that really helped a lot. My views the coordinators are, they're very easy to test, and I found that with my style of development, and again, this is a single developer, my style of development and testing using, as Ben had shown earlier, I use Quick and Nimble, and I found that to work really well with testing. If that doesn't answer the question, please let me know on Slack.
Cool. Are Braille versions of the Quran popular enough that their layout would push back towards skeuomorphism?
Yes, but they're prohibitively expensive. I believe Braille versions of the Quran and the Bible run around $1,200 per book. So with the issues that we have with the issues that we have in our culture, where we don't really have a lot of opportunities for blind users to get jobs and hold jobs, that's just another obstacle that they have to overcome. What's free for us, I can go anywhere. I can go to a mosque and pick up a Quran and they'll gladly tell me to take, just take it home. Nobody has Braille Qurans because they're just too expensive. So yes, it's doable, but it's just one other obstacle that unsighted users have to overcome.
Yeah. So how do you find your users?
That's a really difficult question, because this app has been around for about 10 years. And what I've noticed is that in general, just like with any other app, people usually get in touch with you when they're unhappy versus when they're happy. And that's just human nature. And what I found is every so often people will say, hey, I'm a VoiceOver user and I like it. I had analytics in my app, and for the longest time, for years, I didn't have anyone turn on VoiceOver. And I was wondering, hey, is this, I won't say years, for months. And I was like, is this even worth the effort? But then over time, I started seeing it. And there are communities where, like AppleViz, AppleViz, I think .org, just Google it. They have links to apps that support VoiceOver. And if your app supports VoiceOver, you're already way ahead of the competition. And they are more than welcome to try it out and spread the word for you, because they'll gladly do it for you. My latest beta tester, I found, because he wrote to me to complain that there was a regression in the latest version of the app. I'm like, yeah, I apologize. I was trying to do too much too fast. Would you like to be a beta tester? And he was like, yeah, I'll be honored. So win-win for both of us.
Excellent. And we'll take one last question. How did you get the app looking so beautiful? Are they photographs?
Thank you. Yes, they are. I actually have the original Quran where I carefully pulled out the pages sitting right in front of me from 10 years ago. And someone actually, a friend of mine actually scanned every page, and then she measured the X and Y coordinates of every sentence. And then we had a database that we have running behind the scenes so that we know where you're tapping. It was a very time-intensive task, but I'm pretty glad with the way it turned out.
Yeah, very cool. All right, I think that's it for questions. If you have any more, please feel free to put it in the Slack channel, and I'm sure Aijaz would be more than happy to answer.
Absolutely. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. We will be back at 1 o'clock Mountain Time. Thanks so much.